Hi, I'm Bronwen Gwillim and this is the felt tip pen necklace that I've just made. So this video will wind back and show you how I made it. So hopefully you'll be able to make one too. It's a very wet, rainy afternoon in lockdown Wales here. So if you hear some noise in the background, that's what it is. It's the rain thundering down on the window above me. So I hope you spend a nice rainy afternoon making something lovely like this. I must say I'm very pleased with mine. So you're going to need about 10 felt tip pens to make this necklace. So these are all old ones that have dried up. I think some of them came from my father's house. They were for grandchildren that have long grown up and had their own children. So just check first that they haven't got any ink left in them. And you're going to want the thin ones. You don't want anything that's too thick. They're about 7mm across, and they should work fine for this necklace. So we're going to cut them up and make them into some beads, and each one will probably get about 2 beads out of it. You lose the end with a nib and you lose a bit at the other end as well. Depends on the design of them, but you should be able to use that middle section there. But before we get to cut the pens, just a word about dust. Obviously, when you cut any material with a saw, you do create dust, and plastic's no different. So do wear a dust mask whilst you're cutting or sanding the plastic. These ones are very widely available, but actually just the masks, the paper masks or the cotton masks that we're wearing during COVID times are absolutely fine. The dust levels won't be high. And also keep your space clean. Just sweep with a dustpan and brush, or you can use a small little hoover. And as far as you can, if you can collect the dust up together and dispose of it mindfully so it doesn't get into the watercourse or into the atmosphere too much. So here are the tools that we're going to use to cut the pens. I've got a bench vise, a junior hacksaw, and some emery paper. If you've got a vise, it is very useful. It does make it much easier to cut because you can hold things firm and it makes it much safer. So if you've got one of these, I'm just attaching mine onto the corner of the kitchen table. It's very handy. Tighten that up so it makes a really nice, stable surface for you to hold whilst you're cutting. And then I've got a junior hacksaw here. I like the fact that it's called a junior hacksaw. It makes it sound very friendly and easy to use, and that's certainly true. It's also quite safe. This one's got a kind of medium blade in it. They're not very sharp, but obviously when cutting anything, make sure that you're pushing away and you keep your fingers well out of the way. And then finally, I've got some emery paper. This one is quite a coarse one. It's a grade 60. I use it because it's wet and dry, and that's a useful thing. I can work with it wet and that keeps the dust down. Any kind of sandpaper or glass paper will work though. And if you want a smoother finish, then obviously you can go through the grades and get to a finer one too. I quite like it rough, so I'm going to just stick with the 60 grade. So take your pen. So they're all designed slightly differently, and so you have to judge where you're going to be able to make your first cut. This one, I think you're going to lose that end bit there, so I'm just going to start gently backwards and forwards, keeping my fingers out the way, and I'm going to try and do it evenly all the way around so that my saw line joins up and I don't get too much of a burr. So I'm just turning it round gently so that I'm sawing the whole of the half of the pen. I'll take it out of the clamp and turn it round. And hopefully that line will join up and I'll get a nice clean cut. There we go, I think we're through. I'll just break off that last little bit. Right, so there's the nib. I'll dispose of that. And here we have the reservoir which holds the ink. It's pretty dried up now. And then we can take it out. There's a bit of a burr there that needs to be filed or sanded off. And looking at the end, it looks like I'm going to lose a bit of that end too. So I'll just saw that off in the same way that I sawed the nib end off. Just turning the blade round. Nearly through. You can just break the last little bit off. Pens are made out of polypropylene. It's quite brittle, so you can break the end off quite easily. So there we go. We've got a clean barrel now. There's a bit of dust on the end which needs to be cleaned up. So I'm just going to poke out any bits that are in there. There we go. And we're ready to sand it with our emery paper. There's no writing on this one, so I'm not going to need to clean that off too much. Sometimes they have writing on. So first of all, I'm going to sand the ends flat. Just to make sure that's nice and even. And then I'm going to do more of a kind of rounding motion so that any hard edges are also smoothed off. Yeah, so just taking it round like that. Just so it's nice and comfortable to wear. Looks okay. Do the other side. Exactly the same. Flatten it first of all. Then round off the edges. And then finally, I'm just going to take the shine off. You don't need to do this, particularly because this one's got no writing on it. But I quite like the kind of weathered look. So I usually sand my plastic down. So it looks like it's nearly finished. So we're going to need about 20 of these in all. It looks like the first one's done. So here are my 20 beads, and also I've cut a ribbon of fabric. Now I've just cut this from an oddment that was lying around. It's about 2.5 centimetres wide and about 2.5 metres long. So that will go round my neck twice and make a nice kind of loopy necklace. So the only tool I'm going to use for threading my beads onto my ribbon of fabric is this piece of wire. It's just a piece of brass, and I've just bent it to make a kind of long needle. But you can use a crochet hook or anything really, just to help push the fabric through the bead. But if you stick with 2.5 centimetres wide, it should go through quite easily. So I'm just going to speed through this process and thread all the beads on quite loosely, and then I'll rearrange them later at the end. So off we go. Just thinking about the order of the size and the colours at the moment. I think I need a pink one next to that yellow. Then I'm just going to tie the two ends into a knot, tie it nice and tight. You can hide the knot if you want to, but I'm not bothered. So there we are. I'm just going to rearrange the beads along the length of the ribbon till I get the arrangement that I like. But it's quite nice to leave them loose so that you can kind of play with it. And here we go. Our double-stranded felt tip pen necklace. If you enjoyed this video and would like to learn more with me online, then subscribe to my newsletter at www.bronwengwillim.co.uk.